What's up everyone, it's Ruby here, bringing you guys another video, and today I want to talk about something that hasn't really been talked about a lot when it comes to stuff like Hogwarts Legacy and other projects as well. And I think the reason why it's not really talked about is because, there's certain things that are kind of overshadowing what they're doing, and or people are not necessarily focused on that aspect of the game, right? Because people are more focused on Harry Potter than the other things that it also involves. And one of those things is kind of just the seamless representation that exists in the Hogwarts Legacy game. And kind of how do we get there? Instead of the pushed agendas, instead of the she's a woman and that's the only good thing about her, or she's a minority and that's the only thing good about her. And it's like, how do we get to the seamless representation in media, in games, in movies, in TV shows? Because right now, there is kind of this whole debacle, I would say debate, about how representation should be made in media. Whether it should be only that type of person playing that person, like only gay people playing gay people, only trans people playing trans people, etc., etc., etc. And to a degree, it makes sense, right? Because the reason why those things are important is because only those type of people can really truly understand the meanings behind and the feelings behind who they are playing. Because, let's be honest, right? I feel a certain way that you will never know the way that I feel as just who I am, and I will never know how you feel. But we can invoke similar feelings by understanding the different parts of our lives, right? So by being a certain way, you can understand just a little bit more of what the other person would feel like. However, in order to get the representation that we seek, we do have to compromise a little bit. We have to be realistic a little bit. If representation is truly what we want, then there are certain measures that we have to take in order to get there without compromising ourselves and without being too picky about what we want. Because ultimately, any representation is better than no representation. Or at least it might seem that way. But there are types of representation that is more harmful because it reinforces some sort of stereotype. For example, if we want more gay characters, for example, in media, but we're pushing people like James Corden as a gay character, even though he is definitely straight, then we set the precedent of what is stereotypically gay. And it kind of comes back to also Velma, who has recently been she went from straight to gay, or bi or something. Well, actually, she went from straight to lesbian. And the problem with that, right, is that it reinforces a stereotype. It's like, yes, we have representation, but it's kind of poor representation because it reinforces some sort of stereotype that everybody has about that type of person. The flamboyant, the butch, the different categories that they reach. However, it's not a bad thing to have characters changing their sexualities, because in life we change our sexualities all the time, right? We identify as we discover ourselves. We have ways of finding ourselves. But there's a realistic way to do it, and there's an unrealistic way to do it. One person I want to reference in how to approach character growth is actually Raven-Symoné. Because Raven-Symoné actually talked about this in an interview that she did, where she talked about how Disney wanted to make Raven Baxter, the character in That's So Raven, the same sexuality that Raven-Symoné identifies in real life. And the problem with that is that there's no evidence that Raven Baxter would identify as such a sexuality. She has no connection in the show, and their reasoning was, well, she needs to be what you are. But the problem with that is that if you set that precedent, right? If you set the precedent that you have to be the character that you are portraying, straight actors have to play straight characters, and gay actors have to play gay characters. What ends up happening is the lazy way out. Oh, we're gonna hire a gay actor and just duplicate their personality into this character. But the problem with that is that it doesn't really show the true direction of how a person really develops in real life. The problem with race swapping characters is that it sets the precedent that Hollywood, that these people can be lazy and don't have to try so hard to give you what you want. If you're okay with having hand-me-downs and lazy transitions instead of, taking the time to create new and original stories, all they're doing is just a color swap. Like it's IKEA furniture. It's like, oh, we're just going to change this setting real quick. We're just going to change this color real quick. And now, here you go. Now give us money. You can kind of see the problem with doing that. But whenever someone talks about these kind of issues, it does turn into this guarded discourse of one side takes one side and the other side takes the other side, and they never meet in the middle of representation is good, but only when it's in certain circumstances, right? Everybody wants to see themselves on the big screen and the little screens and the video games and everything. But no one wants to be compromised when it comes to that, right? No one wants the lazy route of, we're just gonna play The Sims, and what we're gonna do is that if people want a gay character, all we're gonna do is just turn this person gay, whether they are meant to be or not. If people want Asian characters, all we're gonna do is we're gonna take this one character who is racially ambiguous and we're gonna turn them Asian. Now that can work to a degree, but it was never really intended to be that way. That's not really true representation. That's not really what we want, because it's lazy. It's disrespectful to both the people that it's portraying and the people that it's replacing as well. Now, some people are A-okay with doing that, and I don't think any of us should be okay with it, to be honest, because it hurts both of us, right? Because what we need is support. We need to show why we need to show people why they should care about these different things. Or we just do it in a way where it's more subtle, where it's more natural, right? Because in order to get to representation, it kind of has to be like one step at a time. It's like I've said this before, but we need to have Elektra before we can have Wonder Woman. We need to have Brokeback Mountain before we can have Wynonna Earp, right? We need to have these certain things before we can get to the real way that we want to do it. Why? Because it shows Hollywood and other people looking at it that we're interested in this type of stuff. We're going to support this different stuff. And we want to see you guys improve your game. So like, you can include this type of stuff. And we're supported. But you also got to go a little bit extra in order to get to those real numbers. Because why was Wonder Woman so popular? Why was Wonder Woman so successful? It's because it was different from the other movies that were being made of female-centered characters. Instead of harping on the fact that she is a woman, they instead focus on the fact that she is a warrior. And that speaks volumes. And suddenly everyone was okay with the movies that they said they were against. Because it's not really about the identities that they're against. It's really about the stories and how they're told and the way that they're shaped. So in order to get to Wonder Woman, right, in order to get that type of representation, it kind of comes down to trial and error a little bit. And it's kind of more like, well, we need to allow these things to happen. We need to allow them to happen naturally so that at some point people are just like, okay. And it kind of just happens that way, right? In order to get to Crazy Rich Asians, we needed to do Rush Hour first. We needed to go through the Jackie Chans and the those characters, those types of actors, in order to get to like Michelle Yeoh and those types of characters. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Jackie Chan, but in order to get a lot of representation, you need to have one person. But nothing that is forced, right? For example, if you take the DC universe, for example, there is absolutely no reason to change any character at all for any reason. Because if it's diversity you want, just look a little further down the roster and you'll find someone who matches that diversity palette that you're looking for. If you want to create a character that is brand new, you can do that. Take a look at Harley Quinn, who was introduced not in the comics, but in Batman the Animated Series. She was a random character that was introduced during the show. She was not a comic book character, but look at her now. She's one of the most successful DC characters of all time, and she's one of the most popular characters in DC of all time. And yet she started in a show. She didn't start in the comics. So it's not really about sticking to the source material. It's about doing something with the source material that is interesting, intriguing, and something that people can get behind. Instead of twisting and turning the narrative of a type of character, like trying to figure out what Superman can be, or trying to change what Batman is, you simply create a new character. And a character that can really be someone that people really resonate with. There are so many characters that were introduced through shows that turned into real characters in the comics. But the reason why they were able to be made is because the stories behind them were so interesting that people didn't care if they weren't in the books. People didn't care if they weren't in the movies. People didn't care if it didn't come from the original source material. Because now it was better than what they saw. Right? At the end of the day, as long as people come to perform and deliver the roles that they're supposed to do, people don't really care. People will support it because it's interesting. And it's not forcing them into anything. It's just showing them a story that is rather interesting. And yeah, the representation might not be perfect, but at least it's something, right? Take Raya the Last Dragon, for example. Raya is an amazing animated film that revolves around the Asian cultures, specifically the Southeast Asian cultures. And it has Southeast writers and staff behind the scenes. But the problem came with the voice actors, who most of them, or at least, a majority of them, were not Southeast Asian. They were actually East Asian. And yet, films like Raya are very important to the overall idea of wanting representation. Because even though the representation isn't perfect, it shows that we are in the direction where it can be in order to have Encanto, right? In order to have these types of things, we need to show that we're willing to support them, even if they aren't perfect. Because what a studio is going to do is they're going to try. They're going to see that what people are doing is making them money. And then they're going to try it. And they might fail at it completely. But as long as we support the fact that they tried, they'll be more willing to try again and do something amazing and mind-blowing. It's like, the reason why comic book movies fell off for a while is because they did terrible. They flopped. And then Iron Man came in, and Batman Begins came in. Well, Christopher Nolan came in and showed the comic book movies can be successful. And now look at it. All we get is comic book movies. You have to show people, you have to show the industry that you're going to be willing to kind of watch their mistakes. And then you're going to be able to support those projects so that they know that, okay, well, if we know this is going to bring in like $10 million, then maybe we can actually look into doing a little bit better of a job of supporting these actors. And I know it's not perfect, okay? It's never going to be perfect. But at least it's closer to the goal than where we were before. And I think that's extremely important. Because when we look at something like Hogwarts Legacy, it introduces representation seamlessly. It's not in your face. It's not saying this is the only thing that you have to worry about this character. No. It's just a character that happens to be one way or another. It's just a character that happens to be gay. A character that happens to be trans. A character that happens to be a woman. A character that happens to be this way. It's not about throwing labels at a dartboard and seeing what lands. It's about doing it in a way where people don't even think about it. Okay? In Superman the Animated Series, Lex Luthor is actually racially ambiguous. Like, it never actually says what race he is. He very much gives off like the mixed race person, but it's never established that way. It's never said to be that way, and yet people can find representation in that because it might be true. You know, people are always talking about how do we get this representation that we want, that we truly want in these shows that we truly love. And yet, we can look at projects that are doing it successfully without even trying, and people don't even know that they're doing it. Because it goes right over their head, because they don't even realize. But not because it's being manipulative or it's being like dodgy or anything, but because they've done it so naturally that it's not even important. Like, it's not even something that people really think about. Like the fact that Barbie is bisexual and has had multiple girlfriends, like in Diamond Castle, excuse me. People look at Barbie and the Diamond Castle, and they just see two friends enjoying themselves, and they don't see that. They don't see what we see. And yet, usually, those things are very intentional because it just fits. Like, you don't need to just be in your face about everything. You can just have it be true without even saying anything. And that's how you end up having the great representation, is because if the only thing that you're marketing is the fact that, oh, we're putting this type of character into the show, we're putting this type of character into the movie, then there's no surprises. And you've already told people the answer to what they normally ask, whether or not they're interested in watching it. Instead of having it be in everybody's faces, do what The Last of Us did. Like, yeah, there's just a random episode where it turns out a character's gay. It's not advertised as something that you have to watch. It's not held up like some sort of trophy. It just is. And that's a huge thing. Because if you just make something that just makes sense and you have it flow naturally, and it's not something that you're blatantly pushing, then you have people that are more willing to listen and watch without even knowing what it's about. We can get away with just friends because we understand that it's more than that. We look at Legend of Korra and we see two beautiful women who love each other. And they see two friends. And yet we both get exactly what we want. And that is how we do representation that is seamless and no one comments about. No one talks about. No one complains because it did its job. Now, obviously, maybe we want a little bit more than that. But in order to get there, we just need to show people that this is what we want to support. Because at the end of the day, if you show, like, you're not really interested, you're not really wanting to support this, and it shows in the numbers, and there's correlation between the two, guess what? Other people are going to see that, and they're not going to want to do what the last person did because they saw that it didn't work. People talk to each other, people look, people see what goes on, and they choose to do things because it'll make them money, because it'll be profitable, because it'll be successful. They don't want their thing to flop. And so, in order to truly make something that really gets to that level, to the level of it's so seamless that you don't even notice it, that you don't even know that it's going to be there until it is, that's what we really want to do. I mean, there shouldn't be a thing where it has to be advertised as like this type of game or this type of movie or this type of show if that's not really what matters. Because it's not really what matters. Because it's not the hand-me-downs that we want. It's the real representation in order to get there. In order to get to Wonder Woman. In order to get to Wynonna Earp. In order to get to She-Ra. In order to get to Hogwarts Legacy. We need to show people that it's okay to make mistakes. That it's okay to try. Because trying is better than not trying. And trying shows that they are at least interested in what we have to say. In what we want. Because in a perfect world, everything would be done exactly the way that we want it to. But it's not a perfect world. And so, you're not going to get 100% what you want. It's the little steps. Think about how long it took to even get where we are today. It took a long time. Don't forget. It used to, like, it still is. But it's different now. Because even though people might not be totally on board with the LGBT, or even the LGB part, it's been done so well so many times that it no longer matters. It no longer really matters. Because it's so successful that they'll just keep making more. And people either get on board or they don't. But it's still there, right? In order to get the T to be fully represented, it's the same thing. It is the same thing. It's more complicated, true, but it's the same thing. You just do it in a seamless way. You do it in a way where it just is, instead of it just being like about that particular subject. Instead of it being about the fact that they're trans, it should be about the fact that they're just an amazing person, amazing character, or evil. Or like, we should not be afraid of having these characters be villains, of having these characters fail, of having these characters show that they're flaws, because they are flawed people, because people have flaws. That's why the strong female character doesn't help. It is a bad trope, because it sets the precedent that the only time we want representation is if it's good and in the best lighting possible, and it's predictable, and it's not equal. We have look at the male side of it, right? There's so many characters, so many different characters, and nobody cares because they're all great characters. They can be bad, they can be good, they can be evil, they can be misunderstood. It doesn't matter, because they deliver the story points that people really want to hear. And that's what we need to get to in order to get female, minority, trans, all of them, to get to that level. And I think we can do it. It's just up to you. Because at the end of the day, we speak with our wallets. And we tell them exactly what we want. And they'll give it to us. Funny enough. It happens that way. Because when you show these studios that you're willing to pay, that you're willing to be at that point, then you're going to succeed. Then you're going to get what you want. And that's just how it is. And that's all I want to say. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel right now, because we'll definitely have more talks like this. Not exactly like this, but like this. Also, more gameplay videos and everything, of course. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, guys. It's been a blast. I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.